Hello, everyone, and welcome into Senior Living Live. My name is Melissa. We thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here this afternoon. Well, we have a wonderful guest and author with us today who is going to share with you ways to converse with your loved one who is suffering from dementia. Many of you have asked questions to us in previous webinars. Topic, how do you respond to questions your loved one may do? And our guest presenter, Angela Brigance, is not only knowledgeable with this topic, but she uses the tips she's going to share with you today every day. Angela will certainly be here to answer all of your questions at the end of her presentation, so you'll certainly want to stick around for that. Of course, to ask a question, all lines are muted from video and audio. You just have to scroll down to the bottom of your screen where it says Q&A. Feel free to type your questions out there at any point in time during the presentation, and I will be happy to read those to Angela at the end of the webinar. And we know you'll have plenty of questions today, so guys, bring them on. Angela, it is so good to see you. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today and to share with you about this topic that is near and dear to my heart. So we'll just get started. You know, many years ago when I was growing up, the biggest fear that a family could have would be a diagnosis of cancer. And I know in my own family, we had many with that diagnosis, and most of them did not make it, you know, different than today's cancer diagnosis. But back then, that was the greatest fear. And now, I think the greatest fear of a diagnosis that someone can have is Alzheimer's. It's that loss while someone's still with us. And right now in the United States, 6.2 million people are diagnosed with Alzheimer's. That is a lot of people, and it has grown so fast over the last few years. It's grown by hundreds of thousands. About 2/3 of those are women. Unlucky us, because that is a huge amount to be just for women. And over 200,000 of those are under the age of 65. I can see why it's the greatest fear, because it is all around us. The other part about it is it's unrelenting and incurable. It's one of those diseases that you're not going to take a pill for. There's a lot of medications out there that help, but it doesn't take it away. There's no cure for it right now, and it leaves families without that ability to communicate. And so that became my mission, is to find ways and use the knowledge that I have of years of experience, 3 decades in this industry, and then decades at home with my own family, that I learned how to continue communication and really build on it and leave that open. Years ago, I was working for a home care agency, and I went into this assisted living community and sat down with the son and his mom, and we were having a little conversation, just kind of getting to know her before we started services with her. And I was asking her some questions, and she was in her chair, and she was so cute, just so tiny. She held on to a little purse. She had on her cute little hat, her little outfit, and she answered some questions. And as we started to talk a little bit more, she started looking around, and you could just see that she was a little bit nervous. And she finally looked at her son and said, "Where's Dad? Where's Daddy? I need Daddy." And her son, before I could stop him, said, "Mom, Dad's dead. Don't you remember? It's been years now." And as he said it, the woman in front of me fell apart. For her, it was the first time she heard that her husband was dead. For the son, his heart was breaking, because once again, he broke his mom's heart. And he was grieving himself still, because that pain was still alive, because every time he answered it for Mom, he felt the grief too. So we had to stop and find a new way for them. And it's so hard, because we've all grown up of, you know, if I lied to my parents when I was growing up, I would be in deep trouble. There's nothing worse than lying to your parents. You lose their trust. They are going to question everything, and you're in deep trouble. So that habit of answering with truth is deeply ingrained in us, especially as children. And yet, Reality isn't the same for someone with dementia. They're in their own truth at the moment, what they believe is going on right now. And so the reality that we believe and the reality that they believe are not the same. And there is, back in the day, I started in this almost 30 years ago, we taught reality orientation. So every day we sat the residents in front of us and we'd say, today is Thursday. It is February 24th. It is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we repeated it over and over and over. We thought it was so important. And in reality, it's not important at all. Who cares what day it is? Who cares if it's February or if you think it's Christmas and we get to have cookies and sing Christmas carols? It really didn't matter. But reality orientation was really strong. Luckily, over the last few decades, over the last couple, I want to say, maybe, that idea has kind of gone by the wayside. And it is one for families who are stuck in that truth of telling the truth to their parents every moment is to let go too. We live in their reality of where they are today, whether they think dad's at work and he's been gone for years, or they live in a different place, whatever their reality is, that's where we're going to go with. And I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes. But there is still another piece that's still being taught. And I know when I've talked to some doctors that I've had, they go, oh yeah, they still teach that in school. And it's called the therapeutic lie. The therapeutic lie would be that sweet little lady who was sitting in front of me, had her son said, instead of dad was dead, he would have said, oh, mom, dad's at work. He'll be here later, thinking that he's going to calm mom down and she'll forget about it. At least for the moment, I don't have to deal with that issue. And the therapeutic lie has been taught for years. I've worked for companies that they teach it in orientation. We're going to teach you the therapeutic lie. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't like to be lied to. And I kind of know when people are lying to me too. And it's interesting, someone with dementia, they connect with your emotion. They connect with what's going on inside of you. And when you're lying to someone, they may not know it's a lie, but they feel that something's not quite right. And who likes to be lied to? I don't. I really don't. I don't want to be lied to. I want to be told some form of the truth, some level of the truth at least. So the therapeutic lie is something that I have found I still fight with, because I have been at a conference filled with professionals in the healthcare industry, and I've had people challenge me, well, you have to lie when they say this. No. You have to lie if they ask about, do I have dementia? And I'll say, no, because what I answer it with, it's really hard to forget things, isn't it? It's not a lie. It's not reality orientation. Yes, you have dementia, but it isn't a lie either. It's an understanding of the emotion that's behind the question. And that's where everything leads. If you want to stay connected, you stay connected to the truth that they have now and the emotion that lies behind the question. So if that little lady said to me, where's my husband? Saying to her son, where's dad? I'd be saying, tell me about your husband. I want to know about him. Tell me about him. Well, my husband, he's a businessman and he runs a bank. He runs a bank. Tell me about that. And as she tells me the story of her husband, I can help ask more questions that walk her away from the initial, where is he? And yet at the same time, let her share her memories and stories, because what we found is that the reason she's asking is there's either a memory or an emotion that's coming up related to her husband that she can't let go of. So for the little lady in my story, she was being asked a lot of questions that she wasn't sure how to answer. Her husband would always answer those questions. He knew if she didn't know the answer, he'd answer them. So she was looking for his comfort. She was looking for his reassurance. So by letting her tell me stories about him, whether they are true or not, I was allowing her to have some control back in the situation, allowing her to be where she was, and I was joining her, so she didn't feel as threatened. and she could relax. The other way I might do it is, instead of saying, tell me about him or tell me about his work or the house, is I might say, it is Thursday at 10 a.m. Where would your husband be at Thursday at 10 a.m.? And, often I have someone look at me and go, well, he'd be at work, lady. Of course he'd be at work. How do you think we pay our bills? Like, oh, you're right. Tell me about his work. We go right back to tell me about it. The two of those go hand in hand, and it is the most common line, the most common words used in all the dementia trainings I've ever had in my life. It's just a part of life for me now. Those words are just a part of my vocabulary, and it takes some practice, but you can get through to it. And you think about, what are they asking? And then listen to the stories. I love the stories that come up because they tell me a little about where they are in their memories. They tell me what's going on in their thought process. And it tells me what emotions they're feeling at that time. And sometimes the stories are just downright fun. They're heartbreaking, they're heart touching, and sometimes we just laugh because they're funny. And we can have that time. I open myself up to those because they don't take long. But in 5 minutes, you can really go somewhere with someone in a way you've never been able to connect with before. None of this is rocket science. It's really not something that is not easy. I mean, it's so simple. The words are simple. Tell me about it. We can all learn 4 words. Tell me about him. Tell me about dad. Tell me about work. Very, very simple words that will get you really far. One of the hardest things to learn is to slow down. Because when you ask that question, you may take a breath and need a moment to tell you the story. One of the things with dementia is that it takes a long time to process information. I had a sweet little gentleman who came, and he was telling me, what do I do with my wife? And he said, I asked her, what do you want for lunch? Do you want a ham sandwich or a turkey sandwich? And he goes, she just looks at me. And so I go in the kitchen and I get started. And he goes, and 10 minutes later, she walks in and she'll go, ham. And he goes, I don't even remember the question I asked. It took that long for her to process the information and let it float up. Give your loved one time, all kinds of time. If you need to go to a doctor's appointment, get there an hour early before you have to leave. It takes time to process that. The more time we give them, the more opportunities we have for that, the easier it'll be, and be totally focused with them. We live in a world where we get drawn by our phones and a ding over here and a buzz over here, and we're not looking eye to eye with the resident. They need to see your face. Words are only 7% of language. They need your emotion, they need your facial expression to fully understand what you're saying. So give them that. Slow down, focus, and listen to their truth. And you will have an amazing conversation that'll take you to a lot of places.
Angela, great job. I know that these are words that you are telling our viewers, but they're words that you say every single day. Can you talk about, we hear the side of it from your knowledge and your experience, but can we hear about it from the side of being the daughter?
Sure, because in the book that I wrote, Finding Rose, which is a story about a family who discovers their mom has dementia, the book is written with my mom's name in it because my mom does have dementia. And I live through this every day. My mom will come over and I go see her at her community, and we do this all the time. We do this all the time. We look at a picture and she'll, be questioning, and I'll say, tell me about Bobo. Tell me about, growing up with this, or the foods we had, the Portuguese foods we have, big Portuguese family and big celebrations. Tell me about Christmas. And I know that everything she tells me isn't true, but it is the memory she has. And the fact is, our own memories aren't complete. I had been very ill a while back, and I had 21 days in the ICU. And I can tell you, I could tell you dozens of stories about it, but only because other people have told me those stories, they become my memory. And someone with dementia, they may take a bit of a piece here and a bit of a memory here and a bit of a memory here, and they put it together and it's one story. And that's okay. Doesn't really matter. It's not going to hurt anybody to hear the story from a different perspective, but it's her memory now. So I love listening to my mom's stories because they are very interesting. And every once in a while, they become really interesting. She talks about before she had kids, and you're like, oh, well, wonder if that one's true. Okay. And it's one of the things I tell families all the time is remember, your loved one had a life before they had you. And
Right.
sometimes that's the life they're living today.
That's right. And I know that when we sort of discussed and previewing this webinar, that some of this takes a little bit of finesse that not all of us may have. How long did it into a groove, if you will? You know, not every time is perfect. I think we would like every visit with our loved one to be perfect. It's just not going to happen. But where you start to feel comfortable and these start to work on a very consistent basis, these tips.
I think what happens is when we go to see someone we love with dementia, we're very grounded in concrete, right? We're practical, we're in the here and now. And we have to remember that they're not. And so it's going to take a lot of practice, but you're going to get a lot of practice too, because they're going to ask the same question over and over. So you're going to have lots of opportunity to answer it in different ways. And it's that habit that we learned of not lying and just telling them the truth. We answer so quickly. So for us, the easiest way to start is take a deep breath before you answer a question. That deep breath gives you time for your mind to go, wait a minute, what were those words? Or what is she really asking? You know, what's happening? And then you can move forward. It's going to take a while. You just keep practicing and doing it. And you can practice with your own family and say, okay, we're going to practice this until we get it right.
Yeah, so some really good follow-ups just in your presentation there. And now we've got some questions. And so this is a really good time,
Sure.
guys. Shorter presentation, but the reason for that is we assume there will be more questions. And usually these dementia webinars, they last about 90 minutes. Most of our webinars, they last about an hour. So we know it's a very popular topic. There isn't a whole, I think in terms of material and resources, there isn't as much on dementia as there is about other things. So we want to provide you with as much as we can. So let's get right to the questions where Angela can do that specifically to each individual. So we'll start with Greg, who came in with the first question. And this is a really good one. And I don't know how much you know the answer to this, but it would be an interesting discussion. Why the huge spike in the Alzheimer's diagnosis over the last few years? What do you think?
You know, scientifically, I'm not sure, but I think that there are more people aware, just like most diagnoses now with internet and all the attention, things like Glenn Campbell and some of the big names that have come out with the diagnosis of dementia. I was fortunate enough to spend a week with Glenn Campbell's wife, training with her when he was first in an assisted living. And some of those bigger names that have come out with the diagnosis and talking about it have made more people aware. And it's been there that, a couple, like when I wrote my book, I wrote it about a husband and wife, and the family had no idea that mom had dementia until the husband died. And I just met with a family last week who was saying the same thing. We didn't know mom had dementia until she went to the hospital. And then they see the holes because together they form one whole person. But when someone's gone, all these holes are still there. And so it draws more attention to it. People are getting diagnosed a little bit earlier. And then, let's face it, in 1985, all the prescription medications finally got approved to be in magazines and on TV and radio. Before that, they weren't. And diagnoses, they were what your doctor told you. But since 1985 and growing, more and more medications are advertised on TV and radio. And so people go in knowing, hey, my mom's kind of acting like this. I think she needs Namenda or, this one or that one, or she has dementia, and so they get diagnosed earlier. And part of it is just that awareness of TV, of stars, the medications that are out there, and the general awareness.
Yeah, and even if you just look at numbers just from the side of the individuals we're speaking about, if you talk about 1985 to now, how many senior living communities could you name in your where you live in 1985? Maybe one. Now it's probably 20 or 30. If you live in a big city, way more than that. So there is
Yeah.
that aging population, right? That is a big one. And more people obviously equals more diagnosis of issues. And so here we have dementia that we're speaking about specifically to today. So there are a lot of variables with that, Greg. And so we appreciate that question. We hope that helps give you a little bit more information on that end. How about Ellen now? When we see them struggling for an answer, is it okay to supply some help?
Yeah, it is. And you'll know if it weren't right for her, because if you give an answer and they say no, it's okay. Just know that that's okay. That may not be what they ask, because a lot of those with dementia, their questions come out, but it's not the questions they're actually asking. There's a lot of symbolism in questions. So they may be asking about the coffee cup, and they're really talking about a drink that's in the fridge, because the coffee cup is the closest thing that can get to it. So word retrieval, you have to know the person that you're communicating with, and know or how far along are they, basically. So if they are asking for that question, and you give them the answer and they're like, yes, yes, great, keep going, keep helping them along. But if they say no, wait and see if you can help. And sometimes I'll say, show me what you need. So my mom can't find a word, I'll say, show it to me. So she'll walk to the part of her apartment and show me something in particular, and that makes it easier.
Next question comes from Lorenza. When points, I guess, or when people maybe are in their end stage, how do you determine if it's just agitation or pain?
Or pain?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, agitation and pain, and usually agitation will come from pain. Always best to, really pay attention as someone's going through a day. If they are grimacing, think about what you do when you're in pain. You're touching your head, you're tightening your jaw. There are physical signs we have and we show when someone's in pain. And on end stage, there's often pain, because you've either been in bed, or there may be contractions. There are things going on that are going to cause pain. So, you want to watch if they have a pain medication. Do things settle down? Did something agitate them? Are they agitated because they were in a room that was super noisy for a while? So look at the environment, look at their body reaction. There's different pieces that that all kind of go together to look at. If they're really agitated, did something just happen? Did they just get care? And did that care maybe, move them around in ways that may have caused pain? Or were there a lot of noise in the room? Did someone put on a TV or music, and at the same time their phone rang, or they're watching reels on their phone, which makes noise, or TikTok? Two different noises at the same time can cause agitation. But for pain, you're going to really watch this facial expression, the jaw, the closing in, holding on. Those are all symbols of pain.
Yeah, that's excellent. Very, very good breakdown there. I hope that answers your question, Lorenza. So we have another question here in the chat box and in the Q&A box. I'm going to finish up in the Q&A box, continue to add more, and then we'll move over to the chat. So either place will get your question asked and answered. So Walter wants to know, what about someone with stage 2, sometimes with accurate memory and times without? He insists he can pay his bills himself or call the bank to solve a problem himself. If he won't let me do or help, what do I say about that false reality?
That's a really hard one, because they do. I mean, there's that place in stage 2. You have to know that in diagnoses, there's a lot of different scales. So it's stage 2 here. Someone will say moderate over here. Someone says it's this. It is just, we just look at the behavior. For me, I just look at where they are. So they have good days and they have bad days. I, for my own experience, what I did with my mom is I took her to the bank with me and we do it all together. But you have to know the hardest part is if you're especially the family who are going to be helping with this, at some point, it's not a matter of may I, it's a matter of I must. I made changes for my mom even on her phone because she was giving away money. So she doesn't have a regular phone anymore. She's got a grandpad. So I determine who can call her and not. So always looking at those pieces, where is that safe piece, and being with them. You're right. We can call the bank. I'd like to be there just in case they ask a question that's going to be a little tougher or a little more detailed. I want to be there with you. So do it side by side for a while and see if that'll work. Those who are being more defensive are, they know that something's not right. They may not want you to know they don't know.
Tell us a little bit about your book.
My book is, I'll show it to you. It's called Finding Rose. And Finding Rose is found, it's on Amazon. So you can get it in an ebook and a soft cover or in Audible. I did it all 3 ways and easy to obtain that way, unless you come by Arbor Terrace of Burnt Hickory, and then I have some here and I'll hand you one here. So it's a story, as I said, about a family who didn't realize their mom had dementia because she's a little flamboyant. She, a doctor's wife, kind of very into Casablanca and old movies and big hats. So she's kind of a big character, which is the reason for the look on the cover, kind of that Casablanca kind of look. But when Dad passes away, there are some signs that start showing up. And the daughter in the book is a nurse. And she doesn't recognize any of the signs until she meets someone who is an expert in the industry with dementia on a plane and discovers that, my mom might have dementia after this person's been watching her for a while and they're sitting together. So the story takes through those initial pieces, recognizing dementia. Everything that I've been talking about today and a ton more, I teach through the story. And the last chapter of the book are all the lessons laid out for you. So I talk about the therapeutic lie, all about that. Reality orientation, tell me about it. All the different pieces are all laid out for you in the last chapter. So it's fun to read. And if you read it, you get to learn a lot about my family, I must say, because there's a lot of it is about my true family. And then some of it blends in all the families I've met along the way.
And you can buy the book.
Amazon.
There you go. Okay. So everybody knows Amazon. Yep. Okay.
Everybody
very
knows
good.
Amazon.
So we had a question and it was in the middle of asking it and then got lost again. Make sure we get to that when you have a loved one that is asking about their home that has already been sold, what do you say to somebody that, may have been living somewhere for 30 years and that's the biggest memory they have and they haven't been living there maybe for 5 years now?
Tell me about your home.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Tell me about home. Oh, at my house, I had the best, I have the garden. My garden wins prizes. Tell me about your garden. Well, it was filled with roses. Tell me about the roses. You're taking them, allowing them to bring up that memory, because that's an important memory, right? Home is really important. It's a big part of your life. So tell me about home. Listen to those stories. And as you listen, you're going to walk them away by saying, if they're talking about the garden, you're going to talk about the garden and what was grown, or if it's about a vegetable garden, what did you cook? Tell me about what you cooked. Just all the different pieces to help them really share that memory. What's interesting, when I was talking to a little lady one day about her husband, and I said, tell me about your husband. And we were talking about it. About halfway through the conversation, she looked at me and she got really quiet and she said, my husband's dead. He died a few years ago. I'm so sad. I miss him so much. And, that was an important piece because in just having the conversation with her, that memory was able to come to the top out of the surface, and she was able to share that. And I think one of the biggest things that we worry about is we're caretakers in heart, and we want to make people feel good and smile and laugh. But in reality, we're not happy every day of our lives, and we're sad about things. And so acknowledging that, validating that emotion that they have is critical. If they're sad, if their heart's breaking, acknowledge it. Man, that must really hurt. I bet you really miss them. Because acknowledging that emotion is so important for their well-being and to be seen. They're not just someone we're there to make happy. We are there for them to be seen, and that's one way to do it.
Great. Question from Morris. If you are telling the story about a certain loved one to a person with dementia, and that person may have been a quote wayward child, spouse, family member, how do you or we avoid the potential flashpoint for bringing that person up to the person with dementia? So, we obviously want to talk about happy memories. Something didn't go so well. What can you do there?
Mean the black sheep of the family, the outcast. Bring up, you may want to bring up memories if you're going to, if you need to. I mean, there may not be a reason to even bring it up. So you have to think about, why am I bringing this person up to mom who does not get along with them? Is something going on with them? Do they need to know something? We think it's really important that they may need to know something. It may not be important to them. But start with a happier memory. Think about that memory. If there was a childhood memory where y'all did something together, and it was a great thing. Went out for ice cream, and remember when Billy did this? Yeah. So you could start with that and see where they go. See where they go with the memory. They may not remember they're estranged. They may not remember that person is not their favorite right now. So you have to kind of feel where they're at. Are they in the memories of where something was going on was really painful? Are they before it? Are they after it? So you kind of have to feel it out. And if you bring it up and they get upset, know that it's going to go away. And next time not to do it that way. You're going to try something different. That's the one thing you get. You get a lot of opportunities to try again with someone with dementia.
Now that is a great way to look at it, isn't it? Great tip there. So this one, we're going to talk about some of the physicality that can happen, right? With somebody with dementia. And so Martina wants to know, I had my mom confront me today wanting her keys to the car. She put her hands up like she was going to scratch me. How can I manage her temper?
She wanted the keys to the car and you didn't want to give it to her, I'm assuming.
Yeah, because she was told by her doctor there's no more driving.
There's no more driving. Oh, isn't that fun? So if it's right in the moment when the doctor's saying no, and I confront the emotion that I'm saying, and you are really upset, and then do it like big, you're really upset and mad and frustrated. It must be really hard to be told you can't do something you've already done and you've been doing a long time. Match their emotion, then bring it back down. One thing with those who have dementia is their emotions sometimes get stuck. They get stuck in anger or up here. They don't know how to bring it back down. So when you match it and bring it down quickly, sometimes that can help them. Down here, quieter, softer. And you're acknowledging that they're frustrated. You're not going to say, well, the doctor said, and I can't. And you go, it's frustrating that you're really angry. And acknowledge that emotion, because nothing makes you madder than someone telling you you're not mad.
Yeah. We can all agree to that.
Absolutely. We can all agree to it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have dementia.
Right.
That happens. But when someone does have it, you can say, that is so frustrating. Man, I really get that. Man, I'm so sorry that's happening to you right now. That's got to be so frustrating. Acknowledge it.
That makes great sense. I love that. And these are all tips, guys, you could start using today. So, it's just getting those tools and understanding how to do it. So the next question here, it's about vascular dementia. And Beth asks, my dad's vascular dementia leaves him quite capable still, but he's totally in denial about having dementia. Is it worthwhile to continue to tell him he has vascular dementia or just give up? That's a tough position to be in.
It's a tough, I would say, I would confront, instead of the diagnosis, because a diagnosis are just words, right? Vascular dementia, what is that? It's like I tell my mom, it's frustrating to forget things sometimes. And, your brain has failed you at times. You describe what that feeling, that emotion that's going on. And they will forget because, that is the nature of dementia, right? I don't remember. And you acknowledge the areas that they're really strong in. I think if we give them as much control of the areas they're safe having control over, it makes it easier in the areas they don't. Give them as much control as they can if it's safe. And then in the other areas, say, I know it's frustrating that this is something that I'm helping you with now. I got that. And acknowledge it.
Great answer. Greg has a good question. So his is about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, and his dad has both. So one, we're dealing with memory, and then the other, we're dealing with motor issues, right? So he says, I've tried to educate my mother about the disease with pamphlets, books, support groups, and info from these types of seminars, but she still seems to be in a state of denial and doesn't want to absorb the information. Are there any other suggestions to get her engaged more in his diseases and managing the diseases? If you're going to have somebody on board with your disease, the spouse is probably number one, right?
Yeah, it's really important they understand it. I would start off with mom is saying, I imagine you're frightened. Mom, it has to be so scary that the doctors are saying dad has these and not knowing what's going to happen and what that's going to look like. That's got to be so scary. I can't imagine being in your shoes and having the person I love most in this world starting to lose some areas. And, for someone in that spousal situation, it is so gradual that they pick up the pieces where their spouse is failing, but they don't even realize they've done it because together they make one. So that's why she may not recognize some of dad's faults, or not faults, but failings right now, or areas of opportunity, because she's picked it up so gradually that they don't even recognize it. It's just what I do now, what dad does. And
That's hard. Yeah.
It is so hard. It's so emotional. And Parkinson's is that physical piece, but Parkinson's itself has a dementia piece.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the dementias that also can have hallucinations attached to it too. So having Alzheimer's and dementia together is got to be absolutely frightening.
And isn't it maybe a way of approaching it from the aspect that, hey, he needs help, he needs some support, he needs so much of it, and you could give that to him as his spouse, maybe just that this person needs you at this time, because gosh, you're talking about Alzheimer's in one corner, Parkinson's in the other, and then you've got them both at the same time. Greg, we are so sorry to hear this about your father, and hopefully some of these tips can help. Feel free to ask any more questions you may have. I know you're in a very tough spot right now.
Yeah.
And
we had a family who actually moved into an assisted living community, and we thought, and they kept saying that it was for mom. Well, we realized about the time they were moving in, it wasn't really mom. It was actually dad in a similar situation. But the family presented it as mom needs it, even though dad did, so that dad would go along. It was a hard piece. And mom, she'll look at me now and she goes, it wasn't for me, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. I got it.
But it works, didn't it?
It does work. And it's some of the things is, I know pamphlets and information, there's a lot out there, but it's very technical.
Yeah.
And it's very, it's frightening. I don't want to read those either, right? And which is why when I wrote my book, I wrote it as a story because it wasn't as threatening. People could read it, see themselves in it, or see things in it, and then they recognize it and go, oh, because it wasn't confronting. It wasn't like, here's the facts. Here's all the facts. This is what's coming. This is what you're going to get. Who wants to read that? No one. The only other part is with the Alzheimer's Association or Parkinson's, see if there's some counselors. See if there's a local counselor that could help just talk out the emotional piece of that to help her get past denial. Denials, I mean, Alzheimer's it's a living death. You're going to go through the stages of death, like denial and anger, and all of those pieces are going to be a natural part of what she's going to go through.
Yeah, and I'll give Greg one more resource here, and this is for everybody. There's a website, Dementia Action Alliance, DAA, and this is a support group. They do webinars. They did a webinar with us. You can find that on our website. And these are people who are actually living with dementia, and you can see in action day to day what that looks like for them. And, you know, it depends on obviously what stage your father is in at this point. But I mean, they have people of varying stages, and your mom, if she's visual or likes to hear people talk or to see what that looks like and maybe how ways she could help just based on what she's seeing with other people with the disease, that might be the route to go as well. So Dementia Action Alliance, guys, please mark that down or tab that as a bookmark. Excellent resource for everybody.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to Morris. My loved one has been diagnosed with frontal lobe dementia. How different is this from the disease, from the most common forms of this disease? And I have been reading and discussing with doctors that even very moderate alcohol consumption can cause or exacerbate dementia. Thoughts?
Frontal lobe dementia this is part of your brain, is where your impulse control is. So when the dementia is here in the frontal lobe, know that their impulse control is going to be less. So think about the Golden Girls. Think about the Golden Girls. When they said something, she just spit out anything, right? There was no thinking about what she was saying. It all came out. That is someone that would be that's the fun example of frontal lobe dementia, because they don't have impulse control to say, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't do that. So I have had people with frontal lobe dementia who have hit when they've never hit before because they can't stop themselves. There's that impulse to do it. And instead of saying, oh, hitting isn't appropriate, and I'm going to pull my arm back, the arm's out already. Or they say something that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Even today, talking with a family, the one family member just kind of went off on someone, and it's a dementia. It's that inability to stop because it just comes out quickly. And alcohol, it kills brain cells. We all know that. We've always known that. And if someone has impulse control, drinking alcohol, which reduces your impulse control, is probably not a great idea.
And as you explained it, I was connecting the dots there, Morris, just as I'm sure you were too. So that makes total sense. And in terms of what he has been reading. So thank you for that question. And we hope that helps a little bit for you and your loved one. Pearl wants to know how to deal with someone with cognitive challenges who complains and complains. There is no redirecting.
Yeah, complaining is a big piece, because it's one way to control a conversation. It's like, one of the things I like to say is when I studied neurolinguistic programming, which was fascinating and part of my training and part of what I do with dementia. And there's an interesting little technique. So when you're ready to have an argument with someone, like I am ready to argue with you, like someone who's complaining a lot, you're going to say something and I'm going to have something to come right back, right? If you use the words, you're right, what the brain does when they're ready to argue, and you say, you're right, the brain goes, what? Like, I was ready to argue with you and you're telling me I'm right? And it gives you 4 to 5 seconds to introduce new information that the brain will take as truth. And it's very interesting to be told, we all like to be told we're right. I mean, it's fabulous to be told you're right and to be right about something. So when they're arguing, like, the food is horrible, you're right. And I hear that that they're having your favorite dish tomorrow, spaghetti. Oh, my favorite dish. Oh, okay. You know, you try using your right, because how do you argue with your right? It stops an argument and it halts it. I'm right. What? Wait. How? What?
Yeah. And then that's where the redirect comes in, is as
Yeah.
you said, in the moment that they're like, wait a minute, I'm right. Okay. Then you can start the redirect. I think that is a great tip. Oh my goodness. Pearl, I hope that that helps. And I hope you get to try that today.
Yes.
That is a great response.
And I got to tell you, it works with teenagers and husbands and spouses.
Okay.
You're right. And
We will all keep that tip in mind for sure.
keep that in mind.
Yeah, and just finishing up over here on chat, Beth wanted to just say excellent advice for the previous question she had, and she says she's passing on the advice to her family care team. So great job, Beth. Over to the Q&A, Stacy asked, what adaptive tools can you recommend to allow use of TV?
TV and technology is difficult because none of our family members were raised with it. Even telephones are so complicated now. So the simpler you can better. I always look at things like what were made for young children, because you want to keep it as simple as possible. My own mom, she has one remote with just a few, it has, minimal buttons on it. And the remote that turns on and off the TV, I have put up on a really high shelf out of reach, because every time she picks it up, I get the phone call that the TV is broken. It is what it is. So I put on her favorite channels, put on favorites so they can only go to certain channels. There is some technology things you could do with it. It's a whole industry in itself. I think there should be a whole industry in itself for technology for seniors. I got rid of my mom's phone because not only was she giving away money, but she couldn't remember how to do it anymore. So now she just hits a picture. And then she chooses voice or video. And if she chooses video, they get to see each other as they talk. If she chooses voice, it's just voice. She's learned how to answer it, but she'll still look at me and she goes, where's my phone? And I'm like, it's right there. It's that thing with all the pictures on it. Oh, okay.
And what brand is that, in case Stacy wants
That's
to
a
jot it down?
brand through Consumer Cellular.
Okay.
And one person becomes the administrator. I'm the administrator for my mom's phone.
Cool.
And I collected the pictures, put in the phone numbers and everything into the system. And then families who are approved that I put in can call, or friends, and no one else can. So I never worry about someone calling and asking her for money. But they can also download photos on it. So when she's not on the phone, the photo gallery goes around and she sees pictures of all of her grandchildren and great grandchildren and everybody.
Gotcha. Great. Yeah. Lorenzo with a question here. How do you calm them down when in a very agitated state, they just groan and cry out, talking softly or gently, rubbing their body, which doesn't appear to help or make them more agitated? Anything we can do with touch or smell or one of our senses, Angela, to help calm someone down?
I was fortunate enough to go through a program called Music and Memory, which is a nice program about music, your favorite music. And it can't be, I Left My Heart in San Francisco and Michael Bublé singing it. He is not who my mom would listen to. It must be the original person. So I made videos for or iPods, this really simple iPods for all of my residents in a community with their absolute favorite music. And if I saw them starting to get agitated, and that's usually the key, is watch them. There's always a sign that they're starting to get agitated. I would put on those headphones with their very favorite music on, and just listening to that would relax them. And it may not be relaxing music, but it was familiar music. Think about some songs like you could still hear in your head. And you can picture where you were when it played. 70s music. It goes on. I could picture what dance I was at and what friends were there and who I was dating, everything about it. I could smell the popcorn and the sweet, sweet punch. You could see it, you could smell it, you can hear it. That's what happens when their favorite music's on. It awakens the brain in a different way. Music played through the headphones like that, or through a speaker that's in a pillow, will awaken the entire brain, and not just the auditory piece, not just the sound, but it awakens their memories, their visual memories, their kinesthetic memories, everything. It's an amazing way to help calm someone that is agitated. I love music. Make sure the room is calm. So again, back to stimulation in the room. Sometimes what we have found, just like with children who have autism, a weighted blanket to help anchor them down because they feel like they've lost some control. And a weighted blanket gives back some of that peace and takes away a lot of anxiety. I mean, my own son, my own child uses a weighted blanket because it helps reduce that feeling of anxiety at sleep. They're
Right.
amazing. And so
Yeah.
there are little techniques like that from other diagnoses that have floated over, and I have found them very effective.
Awesome tips. Yeah. And music therapy. We had a webinar about that. It's scientifically proven that music helps somebody with dementia just because it goes to a different part of the brain and it unlocks that part of the brain. And that may be the calming aid that you're looking for, Lorenza. So I hope that helps you. Sally has a couple of questions. We'll start with the first one. What if the person with dementia thinks their spouse is having an affair and that is why they are not present when in reality, that person has actually just passed away?
Oh yeah, that's not uncommon because they're all the time. I have a thing called two truths in a bridge. So two truths in a bridge is two truths. I have a husband. He's not here. Now, I don't remember he's passed away, so I build a bridge between one truth to another. If my husband's not here, it's because he's having an affair. So we have to help them build a new story in between. I would ask a lot of things, and it could be that maybe before you ever knew, there may have been an affair. So sometimes this is a past truth, and it may not even been a spouse that had an affair. It could have been an old boyfriend that had an affair, and he wasn't there. He was there, he wasn't there, had the affair. So is it some part of a memory coming back that she's building this through? Is it something else? I always will go back to, the same things because you can't say no. There's no rationalizing with it. But you can talk about, tell me about dad. Tell me more about dad. And just start asking a few questions and seeing where the story takes you. We don't know. But it isn't uncommon that comes out as the truth they believe.
Right. She does have a part two to that, and it's kind of along the same lines. The person with dementia thinks they made a decision moving into nursing care that led the spouse to leaving. So you're seeing or hearing all these truths to this individual, but it's not what they look at as reality. So what do you do with that?
Yeah, it's those same truths. I was living at home, my husband was with me, and now I'm living here and he's not. So that drove him away. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many times you say that didn't happen. It's her truth for right now. The one good thing to know is that truth will pass. At some point, it will not stay forever. So you kind of have to hold on to that and say, go to the emotion. I would take that to the emotion that she's feeling is right now is, boy, that it scares you that he's no longer with us, that he was at home and now you're here and he's no longer here. It's got to be scary, or makes you sad, or makes you angry, and see where it takes you, because there's a story there. There's something going on and we don't know what it is. And then as you find out more, it might help you find a way to help resolve some of that.
Sure. We are getting up to the top of the hour. We have some questions that were typed in about 30 minutes ago. We're getting to all of them, guys. So Stacy wants to know, my dad-in-law calls and says his money, computer, or phone, they were all stolen. They weren't stolen. He doesn't have them with him and can't use them. She says, I can't see how I can tell me about it when they feel something was stolen. So what should they do in this situation?
You're right. Those things aren't there anymore, and I've taken care of them. So remember, after you say you're right, whatever comes next is the new truth. So you're right. Those things aren't there anymore. And I have taken care of them and taken them away so that they can't be stolen. Really watch what they're watching on TV and what they're reading in a newspaper too. Because if there's been a lot of thefts in an area, or they're talking about a lot of theft, especially like around the holidays when they're talking about all the people stealing from the porches and all that, that will bring up that fear of theft. And whatever they're hearing, it's happening right in their home or right outside their door. So really pay attention to some of those things, like favorites on a TV. And so it's set up so it can only hit all the favorite channels is amazing technology.
I like that. So we've had quite a few instances of technology helping out here. So, and speaking on that end, you had mentioned that phone. What was the name of that phone again? Kimberly wants to know.
It's called a grand pad. So like instead of grandparent, grand pad, and it's by Consumer Cellular. And I was gifted mine. So it's another family who used one and didn't need it anymore, gave me mine, but it's a couple $100, and then it's like $40 a month. Well worth it for me to have peace of mind.
Can't put a price tag on that for
Yeah.
sure. Margaret has a question. My mom keeps thinking that she needs to move and keeps packing up her room, taking pictures off the wall. Any tips on how to respond? Her mother is in memory care.
Make sure she doesn't have boxes and suitcases in her room. One, because sometimes just the sight of a suitcase or boxes is enough to say, I must be moving. Because like if you turn on the water faucet in the shower, it's time to take a shower. It's that visual sign. So if there's boxes or suitcases, first get those gone. So we have that. Ask her, where are you going? Where are you going? See where she's going. She's going home, or she's going to work, or she's going here, because it's easy to help create spots. I had two little ladies, and people would say they're wandering all the time. They don't know where they're going. They're wandering all the time, and they used to walk around arm in arm, walk all over the place, and everyone thought that they were trying to leave or they wouldn't settle. Well, come to find out, they were both in college together. They both started working at the same place together and walked to work together every day. They were looking for work. And once they found it, they stopped walking. So we just created a spot for them to find work. So we need to find out where mom is going. What is she looking for? Because I don't believe that people wander. I believe that people ramble. They know where they're going in their minds somewhere. They just can't always express it to us and tell us what they're looking for. But once we figure out what it is, we can do that. Are they, missing an animal? And we can do, one of the many, many types of animals, artificial animals out there that could help calm. Is she looking for home? And we bought all new furniture or the bedspread, because we want to make it all look really pretty when someone moves into a community. We buy them all new bedding and everything. And really, they need their old bedspread. Or they need that quilt they made on the bed. So they may not be able to recognize that it's theirs, but there's an emotional connection to it.
Perfect. Margaret, I hope that helps.
Packing is very common.
Yeah.
And it becomes the activity. So they pack all day and we unpack, and they pack all the next day. And sometimes that's okay for a while.
Yeah.
We just see where they go.
Yeah. So that's something you can ask your loved one now, where are you going? And see what that answer is. Hopefully it's something easy on the back end where she's going, and you can
Tell me how I'm going home to see my flower garden.
Yeah.
Put a flower box outside their window with their flowers in it. There are things you have, it's kind of like being Sherlock Holmes all
Mhm.
the time.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure out some of the pieces of the puzzle that are missing.
Gotcha. All right, Linda's question. Our mother has vascular dementia and probably Alzheimer's. She moved from living alone in her house to memory care a few months ago. She's acclimating pretty well and is participating with the activities and really enjoying the home. She has some friends there. The problem is when the daughters come to visit, she tells everybody that she's not happy, and it's clear that she is. She says she's miserable. It's clear she's not. How do you talk to her about this when her reality is different depending on the hour and what she's doing?
Yeah. And it's actually not talking to her, it's talking to the other family and letting them know mom's doing great. Let me share some pictures. Get the help the activity people, get some pictures of her doing the activities so that those are available to say, wow, look at the music program you were in. You're playing an instrument. Tell me about that. And help them have the conversation, help them kind of, you're almost leading the conversation, but staying with their truth, but helping direct them because they are getting, it's like when I used to drop my kids off at school, I hate it, before they go. They have a great time at daycare or school or wherever they're at. And they come home and go, oh, okay. I know you're having a great time. I'm not going to, I don't want to feel guilty about that. I know what the truth is. And you're the closest one. I could complain to my family about everybody. I'm going to complain all day. It's going to happen, but be there during some of the activities. So I'm just taking them out, join in with the activity with them. If they're doing music and singing, join in, sing along with them. Join in with bingo, join in with the activity so that it helps give them something that they're engaged in and you're engaged in together. And that will help direct the conversation and where you're going.
Or that could be where you say, you know what, you're right, but then kind of wink at the staff and say, no, she's happy. It's not that you are terrible. It's just that, you're
Right.
using one of the tips that you just gave us.
Yeah, you're right. And and I saw you playing bingo. And
Right.
sometimes it can be miserable, but man, it looked like you had fun when you were doing this.
I love it. Cynthia's so good. Now, Jolie, I think, I don't know if you were here when we mentioned the Grand Pad, but Grand Pad is what that name of that phone is that Cynthia has given to her mother, or I'm sorry, that Angela has given to her mother. And what was the cellular company that you used for that?
Consumer Cellular is who owns the pads and does the program.
Gotcha. Okay. Teresa wants to know, I ask, do you remember? She says, is that okay? Example, do you remember such and such before I go into a story?
That becomes, when you ask about a specific memory, it's a little more frightening for the person because they don't remember specifics.
Mm-hmm.
You say, and it's a hard one because you could say it at some levels and they'll be okay. But if it becomes an area where it's causing them anxiety, you can say, tell me about the Atlanta Falcons, or tell me about baseball games, or tell me about the zoo, tell me about more general. You want to ask a general, so no matter what they answer, it could be accurate for them. Because if you say, tell me about the time when dad went fishing with Uncle Bill, and she doesn't remember that story, there's panic.
Yeah.
If you say, tell me about dad fishing, Uncle Bill may come out in the story, but it gives him a more general place to draw from.
Gotcha. We've got one more question here from Jean, and this is right in your wheelhouse, Angela. Is there a specific timeline when you could determine to place someone in assisted living who has dementia? So are we looking at assisted living, or are we looking now at memory care?
I always say moving someone into assisted living earlier is the best when they're in early stages of dementia, because they'll learn the routine. So even in assisted living, in dementia areas that are secured, they're wonderful. Everything is structured. it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. They're all the same. They follow the same pattern because that's what residents need. They need that security of knowing what comes next. In assisted living, they're a little bit more on their own. But if they learn the routine that at 7:45, I go down for breakfast. At 11:45, I go down for lunch. At 4:45, I'm going down for dinner. Right after breakfast, I go to my exercise class. Right after lunch is this. Right before dinner is happy hour. You'd be surprised how many remember happy hour, because high balls were really important. They'll remember and they'll get into that routine. And as long as that routine stays the same, they'll do really well. The times when I look at the difference between assisted living and memory care is I look for two things. One, are they safe? Will they walk out the door and not know what to do or where to go? Will they walk out the door and get lost? That's the number one piece, that safety piece. Will they try to do something that's unsafe? Will they go into other residents' rooms and not understand that it's someone else's rooms and get upset? Things that would cause them to possibly be harmed in some way. Because if you get in someone's face, get out of my room, and you're yelling at them and it's their room, and they may, defend their territory. So you have to watch that piece. The other piece is dignity. If someone's in the dining room and they're taking their coffee and they're pouring it over their plate and they're putting their hands in the water and, moving ice from one thing to, a shared thing to a cup, those are things that they knew they were doing it. They would be so embarrassed. So if it's something that challenges their dignity and who they are, or if it's a safety issue, definitely memory care, no questions asked. If they're able still to get around a little bit with queuing, with some reminders or someone escorting them to their meals, and they're able to socialize and have a little bit of a conversation, they may ask the same question, a few times, but they're able to carry on a conversation with like people, and they're able to do activities, and they're not going to wander away. I'd say get them into that routine as early as possible. That's what we did with my mom. As soon as her husband passed away, I moved her up here, and she's in a small assisted living, and she knows the routine. And she's at the point where we take her home on a Sunday, every Sunday. She usually has lunch, but shortly after lunch, she's like, it's about time to go back now, because I need to be able to come to dinner at this time, and I'll need to go to the restroom first. And she's got her schedule, and me taking her out sometimes interrupts her schedule. And so learning that early helps them stay in assisted living longer. If you wait until we're worried about them wandering or their behavior has become a little more questionable, and know that when they move, there will be a decline. I think that we forget. Someone goes, oh, my mom didn't have this much dementia before she moved in. I said, she always had this much dementia. But in her home, she had everything memorized. She had her routine. She knew where everything was. She had muscle memory that would take her to the places she needed to be. She's in a new environment. So it looks like her dementia is worse, but it's actually the truth of the dementia she's always had. So we teach her the new routine, and she's able to move forward, and she'll stay there for a while. But if we go too far, like when we get, oh, we're looking because my dad was found, wandering 2 blocks away, they're in memory care. Or he comes out in the hall and he's undressed. He would be humiliated if he did that in public. Those are the areas that we go, okay, this is the time to move.
Gotcha. Last question just came in from Kimberly. My mother, stage 5-ish, has friends that keep wanting to visit with her, which is great. After they leave, it causes her anxiety. How do I balance boundaries for her without hurting her feelings?
And friends are so important. And I love that she has friends who want to come visit. I would maybe make sure that her friends are educated on how to visit with her. So maybe they have a little more structured visit. So, are they going to come play cards with her and let her do whatever she wants to with the cards? Or, what's happening because something when they leave, there's an anxiety, they're leaving and I'm staying. So maybe smaller groups, make sure that she's involved in something when they leave. So maybe they're leaving right at the beginning of a sing-along and they sing a couple songs and then they disappear and mom continues. Or after they leave, if she's in a memory care, that she has time in a relaxation area. Like we have our reflection rooms where they can listen to quiet music and they do that. So maybe the visit ends there. So when they leave, they're in a calmer environment. Just, you play with a couple different things to see what's going to work the best.
Yeah, great tips. I mean, even I'm learning, and I've been through a lot of these dementia webinars, and it seems like every time I learn something a little bit new each time. It's great. Janet just wanted to throw in a comment here that now instead of telling her mom, hey, do you remember this, when starting a story, she's just going to share the story and see if her mom catches on. So now she's just going to readjust how she does that there. So I hope that does work. Yeah. Good, Janet. We're glad you're taking notes. And Richard wanted to just tell you, thank you so much. I have another commitment. I appreciate your advice and recommendations. I think we can all collectively say the same thing. Angela, you have been absolutely fantastic in our webinar today. So many great tips. Anything you want to part with before we leave?
No, if you have questions, this group will answer a lot of questions for you, and you can always find me and look up my name. You'll find me if you have any questions, and I'm always happy to answer questions and be there for you.
Can we see the book one more time?
Yep. Here's the book one more time.
Yeah.
Finding Rose. And it's Angela. There's an IA because my mother decided to drive me crazy, and there are days I know she succeeded. So
always a pronunciation there. It's how do we say this? It's Angela, but she does have the extra I. So that's how you can find her, ladies and gentlemen. And we all thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. And Angela, we appreciate you starting the conversation and giving us these great tips.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for letting me share here. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, of course, we thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this webinar with Angela, please feel free to head over to our website, www.seniorlivinglive.com. There you can find all kinds of informative videos, many about this topic, dementia. They are all available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we see all the thank yous coming into the chat box. Yes, so many thank yous. And obviously everybody here appreciated your wonderful presentation and your tips. Angela, we hope you don't become a stranger. We hope to see you again very soon.
Would love to. Thank you so much.
All right. As always, everybody, we appreciate you watching Senior Living Live. Have a great day.